Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Money in the Morning, aka Economic Elevation, aka Financial Consciousness. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I just realized I was actually super late today, and I'm so sorry. I do not want to disrespect your time. You know that. And I rolled out of bed. In case you don't know, I married the most beautiful woman in the world. And sometimes I lay in the bed with her and I don't want to move and I don't want to get out of that bed, and the bed just there was some Elmer's glue somebody attached to my butt that kept me stuck to the bed. And as I tried to get out, the glue pulled me back in. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Hey, if Donald Trump can make up whatever story he wants, I can do the same thing. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing good, and I hope you're feeling good about your life today. And I appreciate and respect the fact that you're coming in here on a Sunday to talk about black economics, because white supremacy doesn't take a day off, and neither do we. And so the great thing, though, is that when you're focused and you do things in the right way, there are plenty of opportunities everywhere. And in case you don't know, in case you're new, one thing we operate on is what we call the B1 philosophy. B1 means black first. Black first means that we don't hate anybody. It just means we put our own community at the top of our priority list. Let me know if you agree with that. I hope that that's okay. I think that we have to be unconditionally black and not afraid of that. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be mean to people, but you definitely have to take care of yourself and take care of your children, because if we don't do it, then nobody will. Can I get an amen on a Sunday morning from everybody? Can I get an amen from y'all today? All right. So anyway, let's jump into the conversation. I'm going to start off with something that I shared. First off, let me make a quick announcement. We are having a financial slumber party on the 13th. If you guys want to join that, that's going to be a lot. Our financial slumber parties are just so lit that the whole internet talks about them, because they're just it's like a Diddy party without all the jello and the baby oil and so I'm kidding. I don't even want to compare it to a Diddy party. But the boys' parties are safe because they're on Zoom, so nobody's going to touch you. But everyone will love you and support you, and we're all going to get together and learn finance, and we play music, and we just have a blast. It's really fun. So bring your whole family and come in. We usually start, like, I want to say that this one starts at 10:30 at night or 11. I got to go look at the time to be exact. And we learn, and when we get done, we're smarter, and we also have had a blast. So feel free to join us. I'm gonna put the link here in the chat in case you want to participate. And this one's gonna be about money and relationships. So I'm literally gonna do a deep dive scientific presentation on love, money, and power, and how that works in all kinds of relationships. Because I've mentioned to you all that relationships, understanding relationships is a really important part of just business and making money and stuff like that. I think we should reconsider the idea that our kids should be trained on relationships when they're young, so they know how to collaborate and not compete when it's unnecessary. A lot of times the trauma causes you to see somebody as an enemy when it'd be better to make them an ally. And that's something I've done in my own emotional maturity. When I was younger, I used to compete with, if a guy challenged me, I would compete with him. And now I have a different challenge. My new challenge now is, rather than competing with you, I'm gonna actually do another challenge, which is to see if I can take that enemy and turn them into a friend, right? Is there some way we can talk enough that after we're done, not only will I'm not trying to beat you, I'm trying to align with you. Like, let's figure out if we can align and find out an area where we agree and we can work together. And it's worked sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's been an area of growth. And actually that philosophy, partly it probably comes from the fact that I've had the wonderful privilege of being a bonus dad to three awesome children. And let me just tell you, when I got together with my wife, her son was 13 years old. And if you know anything about 13-year-old boys that are coming into puberty, they're not necessarily fond of the idea of another man being in the house who's not their dad, if you've ever seen that up close. And it created friction and tension and stuff like that. Now, I grew up in a household with a man who's pretty, he was pretty commando like. He was a police, he was not just a police officer, he's a police commander. So he wasn't a cop. He told cops what to do, and hundreds of them. And he knew karate, and he killed people. So you didn't challenge his authority without thinking that you might end up in a body bag possibly. And so but I just said, that's a generational curse I want to leave behind. That's one that I don't want to carry into the future. So instead of me, dominating him and proving to him that I'm the man of the house, I said, okay, let me try a different strategy, and let's see if I can turn him into an ally. Right? Let's see if I can use patience and kindness and whatever other tools I could conjure up to see if we could actually become friends. And now, not only it took years of patience, and but not only are we connected and we are friends, but we do business together. He messaged me this morning, and we're doing some investments in crypto together, and he hits me up to talk about his future and his life and everything else. And so to me, I think that that is, I would encourage everybody to think that, to try to grow into that if you can. I'm not telling you what to do. I am not Gandhi. I do not have it all figured out. But I have found that it is so much more rewarding. I mean, think about this, right? Like if you look at for example, look at T.I. and 50 Cent beefing in the hip hop world. I told you I was right in the middle of that. I did some content on that, and I know for a fact his family saw the things I was saying and stuff, and because I was like, no, I really want to talk about this because you're talking about black culture and black family, which is right there connected with black wealth. If you want to know why black wealth is dropped, it's because of black culture and the breakdown of the black family. So I felt compelled to make some comments, and I've done some things on this in class, so you can go back and watch that if you want to. But I said, gosh, it's so what's interesting about this back and forth in this beef is that these two guys are very powerful. And when you have two powerful entities that are at war with each other, it only creates destruction. Like war does not create progress. There's never been a society or a continent or a community anywhere that has thrived in the middle of war. If you see pictures of Europe during World War II, has anybody ever seen what Europe looked like in World War II? It wasn't just like a hood. It was like it had like 80% of the buildings were burned down and crumbled down. They've been blown up. You just literally engaged in systematic destruction of each other, and they're going to destroy you, and it becomes a race to the bottom. It's a terrible experience, right? Now I want you to translate that to the black family. What happens when you and you are a hardworking, determined, very stubborn person, and then you start fighting with your spouse, or you start fighting with your sibling, or you start fighting with the dude down the street, and you're systematically working to destroy each other. After the battle's over, you might get to say that you won, but you really didn't win. You actually lost. You weren't a winner. You were actually the person who was not the biggest loser, because everybody loses in war. Everybody takes blows and hits. And so with 50 Cent, for example, 50 Cent and T.I., one guy attacks the other one, and the other one says, well, I'm going to do a documentary about you because you're a sex trafficker. Well, then the other one says, well, you beat up women and back 10 years ago, and you almost got arrested for that. So then people are like, oh wow, so you're a bad person and you're a bad person, so both of y'all are evil, horrible people. And so it kind of gets to the point where it's like you might think you won, but really you're going to take so many blows that you're going to wish you had never been at war in the first place. So peace is powerful. Peace leads to prosperity. Peace is a wonderful thing. Imagine if those two guys got together and said, let's figure this out, because instead of, like, if I'm a six and you're a three, and we go to war, then you're going to throw your whole three to take out my six. So by the time it's done, I won't be a six anymore. I'll be a three, but you'll be a zero. And I'll say, I won because I'm a three and you're a zero. When really, instead of thinking that way, you should say, well, wait a minute, six plus three is actually nine. So if we find a way around this, if we find some common ground, then we can both be a nine and elevate. And so really, if you want to understand one of the mechanisms through which black wealth gets destroyed on a systematic level, I want you to look at a family that's fighting. Look at a scenario where you had two people that were either best friends or close siblings or whatever, and they start fighting and they start trying to harm each other, and first there's the disconnection. The disconnection is going to be a wealth killer, but then when you have the mutually assured destruction, then both of y'all end up, just, I don't know, fighting in the middle of bankruptcy and poverty and financial stress. And this is something that I do believe that this is something sinister about capitalism. I've heard people throw out conspiracy theories that the goal of capitalism is to make sure that you don't have secure, stable families that you can depend on. Because what would happen if everybody had what would happen if you had a society where everybody stayed married and everybody had a mother and a father and everybody had financial security? What would happen? Do you think people will be more or less likely to go to work if everybody was educated, prepared, financially secure, and safe? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think people will still be rushing to get to these horrible jobs and slave and trade 100,000 hours of their lives in order to make a couple dollars? You think people will be eagerly quick to do that? Or do you think that they'd be if everyone was educated and financially prepared and economically intelligent? Do you think that people will be rushing to throw money down the drain buying useless consumer items? Yes or no? Or what if everybody was economically prepared? Someone had been buying stock for them since they were a child, and they owned assets. Do you think that they'd be quick to run out and find a landlord to pour money into the landlord's pocket for 20 years to pay rent so they can survive month to month? What do you think? So the point of the matter is to help you understand that a lot of capitalism feeds off of economic desperation. Capitalism is Warren Buffett says that wealth is a transfer of resources from impatient people to patient people. But sometimes the impatience is some of it's cultural, but some of it may be situational. If I'm situationally impatient, what that would mean is that I'm in a situation where I'd like to think about the next 5 years, but I can't because I'm in survival mode. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I hear you, Dr. Boyce. I want to think about the next 20 years and what my kids and grandkids are going to have in 20 years from now, but I can't because I gotta stress out over paying the rent by Friday. I got to think about what's happening right. I got to eat today. I can't think about the future. I ain't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time to be thinking about 10 years down, making plans for 10 years, 20 years down the line. But see, the problem is that your resources got transferred. You lost a lot of wealth because when you look at things like gentrification, for example, which seems like this rope-a-dope, but they didn't sneak up on you with that. They were planning gentrification in the 1980s. They were going down and they said, "Oh my God, we got all these black people living in this riverfront property. This is going to be valuable by the year 2010." So they started buying this stuff in the 1970s and 1980s, and they patiently waited and plotted and planned. And next thing you know, there's a Whole Foods and a Starbucks, and some random white women walking around a neighborhood that you were too scared to go to when you were little. Parts of Philadelphia. There's parts of Philadelphia where people said, "Oh yeah, back in the '80s, you didn't come over here because they had drugs and crack, and you was gonna get shot." And then now you go over there, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is nice. This is nice." And they got the mall, and they got the Starbucks, and I went out for a walk and got my morning coffee. And they're like, "No, back in 1985, if you came over here, you were probably going to get shot, right? Or you were looking for drugs." And that's not just true in Philadelphia. It's true in Chicago. It's true in a lot of places. So really, part of if you want to know part of what wealth is, a lot of wealth is plotting and planning. Jeff Bezos, I think I might have mentioned this in class yesterday. I'm gonna mention it again though. Bezos asked Warren Buffett. He said, Warren, how come people just don't copy your strategy? Like, why don't people do what you do so they can be wealthy like you? And Warren said, he said, I don't hide it. I tell everybody exactly what I'm doing. He said, the problem is that I have a get rich slow plan. He said, I don't have a get rich quick scheme. I have a get rich slow scheme. And people don't want to think about the future. They don't want to take their time and make a long term plan. They're like, I want it now. How do I get it now? I want my MPV now, right? So ultimately, these are cues in terms of how wealth works. Now, let me share something with you in a minute. And as I move forward, I'm gonna go to my Instagram real quick, and my Instagram is Dr. Boyce Finance. I'm also on Substack, by the way. So if you feel the need to go over there and you want to hang out, it's a pretty cool platform. A lot of smart people over there. So the Karen and Kendall Green advised me to get on Substack. So now I'm on Substack, but I'm over there by myself. So I need y'all to come over there and hang out and make some like I don't know really obnoxious comments or something if you want to. I'm playing. All right. So anyway, let me share something with you. This is something that I put up this morning. And again, it's just me being my version of obnoxious, but this is something that I really believe in. And I put this sign up. It says, "Get rid of the victim mentality." And let me explain what I mean by that. I think that sometimes there is a tendency for us to really see ourselves as victims and to really obsess over our victimization to the point where we celebrate those who will oppress us. Like, we really honor and celebrate white supremacy by constantly reminding ourselves and each other that the only thing you can accomplish in the world is whatever white people will allow you to do. That happened to me. I've told you all this story. Probably I told it a while back, so I'll share it again real quick. When I was in college, and I decided at 18, 19, I wanted to change my life, and I decided to study hard, and I became the best student on campus. I became known as the smart guy, and so I had imposter syndrome for a while, like because I really I never made an A in any class in high school or middle school or elementary school. So to make straight A's in college was just kind of foreign for me. But what actually worked was I thought about sports, and I just compared. I compared academics to sports, and I said, okay, in sports, if you want to win, you got to practice harder than the next person. If you want to be successful, you have to be consistent. You have to practice every day, not once a week or once a month. Also, you have to plan ahead, right? If you see a team that wins a football championship, they didn't start practicing 2 weeks before the championship. They started practicing in the spring, right? Not 7, 8, 9 months before. So I took the same approach to academics. That's literally how I made straight A's in college. It was not complicated. In fact, the other thing that I noticed was I said, okay, I have this job at Taco Bell, and I go to work on this job 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day. And I said, so if I can work at Taco Bell 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day, then I can study for 4 or 5 hours a day. That's like half a day off. That's easy, right? And I don't even have to stand up. When I would go to Taco Bell, I would be tired. My legs would be exhausted from standing all day. And then also I met my daughter's mother at Taco Bell. She was so cute, and next thing you know, we're having sex, and she gets pregnant and stuff. So stay away from tacos, because tacos will get you in trouble every time. It's the damn burritos. It's what they put in the food. But anyway, so the point was that from this experience, I was like, okay, people work really hard for very small amounts of money. So I remember just saying, well, if I can work at Taco Bell for 8 or 9 or 10 hours for minimum wage, then I can study for 4 or 5 hours because I'm doing this for the rest of my life. And I found that really fascinating. How many people I know who are in college who can't even sit down and study for an hour or two. Well, won't even study more than 2 or 3 hours a week, and then they graduate and they don't get the opportunity they want. So next thing you know, you're working your ass off on a job that you hate for the next 40 years, right? So you're gonna literally trade in this opportunity to do well for 3 or 4 years and set yourself up for life, versus literally spend the next 40 years paying a price for what you did not do when you were young. And this there's a term for that. They call it hyperbolic discounting. It's where you are so focused on the present, you're not conscious. It's a lack of consciousness. You're so focused on the moment that you can't see the future. And so ultimately, that was my logic in college. That's literally the thing that led me to get so far ahead of everybody else. Because if you know anything about college students, they just don't work that hard. And I wrote a book about it. It's called Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About College. I gave it to our 15-year-old, and she was like, she just kind of looked at me with like this blank stare and said, "Okay, thank you." But she's like, "I already heard all these lectures and every morning when you drive me to school." But literally, the thing was, I said, okay, it's not really that hard to make straight A's in college. It's just that we are intimidated, and we think that we don't have what everybody else has, I guess. I don't know. But really, if we work as hard at that as we work at everything else, then it's pretty straightforward and easy, actually. And I wrote the book because I was like, okay, now that I'm a professor, because I was on the faculty at Syracuse, I was like, I'm just going to share everything I know from the perspective of a professor. And just so that way you can't come into college and say, well, the reason I did badly is because I didn't know what was going on. In fact, I saw something, and I'm going to get back to that slide I just shared with you, but this was actually on my mind. I saw something where Allen Iverson, as a way to kind of explain why he blew so much money, there's an article that I guess from an interview he did where he says, quote, "No one in my family went to college, no one got married," and he explains why that this is why he was doomed as a millionaire. Now I got to read this. I got to read this and do a deep dive. But here's the thing that's interesting to me is that it's like, when you say this, but it's like, well, wait a minute, you were exposed to lots of millionaires. You were exposed to people that could help you change your culture, change your habits, change your condition. So on one hand, it's difficult because it is hard to shift culture 100%. But there are guys that did that. LeBron James went and deliberately sat down with Jay-Z and Warren Buffett, and Jay-Z sat down with Warren Buffett so they can learn how to manage the money that they had. So you have a choice, right? Like just the same way you learned how to play basketball. Like you didn't come out of your mama's womb playing basketball good enough to go up against Michael Jordan, right? You had to practice, practice, practice. Right? Even though Allen Iverson made, they had that famous video where he claimed he didn't practice. No, he was damn good. To be that good, you had to practice. You had to commit yourself to being better. You had to be in growth mode. You had to evolve and adapt because the player you were at Georgetown wasn't good enough to be the NBA MVP. So you had to grow to do that, right? Like the Negro need to grow, right? You knew you needed to grow and you grew and you did it. So the question then becomes, and this is where I go back to that victim mentality thing. And I'm about to give you some science as to why, and hopefully persuade you to be very careful about embracing this and accepting this, is that it's really interesting though that on the court when it came time to grow and evolve and adjust, you were ready to grow, evolve, and adjust. But then when it comes to this other area, how what you did with your resources, it's like, oh well, I'm just a victim of a single parent household, and I didn't know no millionaires, and nobody in my family went to school and got married, so I was doomed from the jump, right? So it's kind of a contradiction. It's a contradiction. On one hand, you become the fierce warrior who creates his own reality, but then when it comes to areas where you also need to be held accountable, it's like, no, I'm gonna slide right back into victimhood, and that's going to explain why I threw away $1 billion in generational wealth. He threw away $1 billion. He probably made over 100 million, but if you know the math of finance, you will know that consistent investment at an income at that level could easily create $1 billion empire that could literally be feeding your great grandkids, your great great grandkids, etc. Like you had a Rockefeller level opportunity that was blown because we sometimes choose to embrace culture that is very anti-wealth, right? So let me give you some science behind the victim mentality and why I encourage you to reconsider this and not let people sort of drop you into that victim box. I'm not saying that things didn't happen to you. I'm not saying that you weren't disadvantaged. I'm not saying that there weren't obstacles to overcome. But the thing about, and I think about this as a mathematician. When I taught math at the University of Kentucky, we ran into problems all the time. That's what you do in math. You solve problems. And the thing about a problem is that a problem doesn't mean that you have a barrier that's insurmountable. It might be, it could be, right? But you're at least supposed to sit down and concentrate and try to solve the problem. And 99% of the time, the problem was solvable. It just required you to grow a little bit. You might have to go and open a couple of books. You might have to go talk to a couple of people down the hall. You might have to spend a week thinking about it. But one thing you could not do when we would get a problem is sit there and just cry about it or just say, well, the reason I got bad grades is because you gave me problems and I couldn't overcome them. So I'm a victim of the obstacles that were put in front of me. That's why I'm still stuck on stupid. That's why I'm still stuck exactly where I was a week ago because I couldn't grow because you put this problem, this obstacle in front of me, and I wasn't able to overcome it. And in fact, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to overcome it, I chose not to even try. Or maybe I tried for 10 minutes and it just didn't work out, so I just gave up. How often do you see that? How often do you see where somebody will just try? And I'm gonna tell you, this is super important. We've talked about resilience in business. How many times have you seen somebody that will say, "Yeah, I tried and it didn't work out. That's why I gave up." Or I tried and you know how they do. You know how they just they just be taking it away from us and they just be stopping us and da da da. And they try one time, maybe twice, and then they give up and they say, "Well, I tried." Well, yeah, I get it, but sometimes growth requires you to try over and over and over again. Really, when if you're lifting weights and you're trying to become physically strong, you can't do one rep and then quit. You got to do a lot of reps over and over again. When we would do when we studied math when I was teaching math at Kentucky, I remember they would give us a math problem on Monday and say you have to solve this by next Monday. And we would look at this thing and it would look like Chinese. We'd be like, I don't know, I have no damn clue. It would terrify me. I'd be like, man, I don't know what's going on at all. But I knew I had to do it, so I would keep trying. I would keep poking at it and trying this and trying that, talking to this person, talking to that person, looking this thing up, and I guarantee you, here's the thing: sometimes I solved the problem, sometimes I didn't, but every time I committed the energy to consistently trying to bang away at the wall, I always grew. I always got smarter than I was before, and that's the purpose. See, that's the win. And I want you to understand this as you're trying to accomplish things and overcome things and grow and develop is that the win is not what you think it is. The win is not the success. The win is the growth you experience during the process. In fact, they do this in movies a lot. They'll have a character in the beginning that has one goal, like I want to be a millionaire, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to get out of jail, right? Or whatever it is, right? And they'll spend the whole movie trying to go through the hero's journey of accomplishing the goal. And then when they get to the end, they might get their goal, but because they've evolved so much throughout the story, through the journey, they don't even want it anymore. They literally don't want money anymore because they've had these experiences that made them really reflect deeply on why they even wanted the goal in the first place. And really what that told me was I said, okay, so the reward really isn't in the result. The reward is the journey. The reward is the journey. The journey is where you grow. The journey is where you evolve. The journey is where you become the smarter, more capable, more accomplished person. So when you give up early, when you let people drop you in a victim box and tell you don't even try because it ain't gonna work because white folks ain't gonna let you do it, then you're missing out on the growth. And a lot of you see people that are out here that haven't grown. You see 45-year-old men acting like 20-year-olds. You see women, same thing. They haven't evolved out of their childhood trauma, right? Like I'm deeply concerned about the fact that most black women don't grow up with their father in the house. I think that that's a problem. I think if most black men didn't grow up with a mother in the house, I think that that would be an issue. Even if she lives down the street, because people will be like, well, her father's involved and blah, blah. I'm like, okay, I get it. But what if my mama lived across the city and I saw my mama twice a week? That's not the same. My mama was in the house every morning, waking me up for school, yelling at me when I didn't do right, just on me every day, and I got to know women really well by getting to know my mother. I could even tell if my mother was on her cycle by how the bathroom smelled. You'll know what I'm talking about. That sounds nasty, but it's true. It's just a subtlety of womanhood that I never would have gotten if I only saw my mother once a month or once a week or whatever, right? So really, I personally think that these things do matter, and these are things worth thinking about. And so ultimately, not growing beyond your limitations is what stops you. That's what keeps you in the box. So here's why the victim mentality can be bad. Here's some science behind it. There's one theory from Martin Seligman in the 1970s called learned helplessness theory. And it says this, it says it says that when people repeatedly experience situations where they believe their actions do not change outcomes, they learn to become passive. That when you're constantly in situations where you don't believe, or when you've been trained to believe that what you do ain't gonna matter, you become very passive. And I want you to think about how many of our people become super passive about their own existence. Like literally, it's your life, it's your situation, it's your family, but you become passive because you just say, I quit, I give up. Like I don't it ain't gonna matter if I do it anyway. So that gives you an ability to say, well, I just didn't try because if I had tried, it wouldn't have mattered. So why would you try to do something if you don't think it's going to work? Right? Why would you invest in a company if you think it's going to fail, right? So you take yourself out of the game before the game begins. And it says here the research findings are the individuals who are exposed to uncontrollable negative events become less likely to take action later. They show reduced motivation, poorer problem solving, and lower persistence. Let's meditate on that for a minute. How many of y'all have seen this? Do you know anybody who has reduced motivation? Like I'm gonna sit around and smoke weed all day because they told me the black man can't be nothing. If I leave the house, I'm only gonna get shot by a police officer anyway, and they ain't gonna give me no jobs and I'm just at least I'm not in jail, right? Have you ever seen that where people would set like the lowest bar of expectation and then consider themselves successful because they didn't fall into the absolute worst trap imaginable? Like, well, I take care of my kids. Well, you're actually supposed to take care of your kids. Like, you don't get a trophy for taking care of your children, man. Like, that's something you're supposed to do. Let's move on. They show reduced motivation, problem solving. I mentioned that this pattern predicts depression and decreased achievement. So you accomplish less and you end up depressed. So those two things. Depression and anxiety is a big problem in the black community. It's very, very high. My wife's a therapist. She sees lots of patients. Um, so let's see here. Oh, so they said that what can happen is that the work showed that people can literally learn how to be so helpless that they don't even try, even when the opportunity exists. It becomes like the fleas in the jar thing, where the fleas are so used to the lid being on the jar that even when you take the lid off, the fleas still sit at the bottom and they don't fly up there. And when one flea comes along and says, "Hey, y'all, we could fly out this jar," the door's open. They'll say, "Nah, man, you tripping, dog. Hey, wait, oh, you up here? You don't know what I've been through. I've about to bump my head on the ceiling 2 times, and like just." And so literally you can be trained to be helpless. And I want you to think about how many times, I mean, process this, right? Look at the fact that, for example, that how you have so many school districts where the majority of the black children cannot read a grade level. Literally, and then somebody will come along and to make you feel better and say, well, it's because of racism. And I get it. I know about racism. I studied it extensively, but I ain't never seen a white man that told me I can't read a book. Like I just haven't. There's no white man that's gonna slap a book out of my hand and say, "I saw your Negroes reading, and you're gonna go to jail for that, boy." Like that don't happen no more. So why can't your kid read at grade level? Seriously, it's your fault. You didn't do it. You didn't. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. Stop trying. You can't you just keep messing up and acting like somebody else did it. So let's keep going. All right. So there's another theory from Julian Rotter. And it's called Locus of Control Research, and so so basically it says that people can have an internal locus of control, which is I influence what happens to me. My actions determine my outcomes. What I do is the determinant of how I end up. Or they can have what it's called an external locus of control. My life is controlled by luck, fate, or other people. And I want you to think about that. I want you to ask yourself, how would you define our community in terms of what we are taught? Are we taught that what you do will determine your outcomes? Or are we taught that what the system does is going to determine your outcomes? What white folks do, what other people do, what your parents did, or what your friends do, or what people allow you to do. Really, what your boss lets you do. We have really, I think sometimes we are trained to have a big issue with external locuses of control. We will sit and obsess over what other people are doing and how it's affecting our ability to do whatever we want to do. I really have always been curious about those DEI speakers that would go to different campuses and speak to a whole room full of white people about how they need to learn how to be anti-racist. And I get it. I understand it. I can see the value of it. Like, sure, yeah, if you want to go hire more black people, I'm all for that. But I kind of think that also simultaneously, you need a pattern where you're going to work with our people and learn how to be the best you can be and get the most out of what you've got. Right. And so I don't know. I don't know how to tell people how to frame their racial conversations, but some of it I just won't do. It's like, no, I'm not going to go sit and ask a bunch of white people to change their behavior. I know too much. I know too much about white culture. I know how they built this country. I know that they're not going to have a lot of sympathy or empathy for us. And really, humans don't really have that much empathy for other ethnic groups. They just don't. Even black people, like we don't really sit around thinking about how we're going to save the Asian community, right? I'm like, well, that's their job. Like, I'm sure you got some Chinese leaders that'll make sure Chinese people are good, but I don't. I'm not because I don't care. It's just I ain't got time. I got my own family over here, right? So let's keep going here. So the research finding is that people with an internal locus of control, people that take accountability and say, what I do makes a difference, they are more likely to invest in education and skill development. So they're more likely to jump in and say, what can I do to make this happen for me? They persist longer on difficult tasks, meaning they have more resilience. They also achieve higher academically and in career. Does that surprise anybody? Who's surprised by that? That people who take accountability, who internalize and say, I'm going to do the best I can. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I determine most of my outcomes in my life. These people are more successful in education. They're more successful in business. They're more successful in life. How many of you are, is anybody surprised by that? Yes or no? Is anybody surprised or is just what you would expect? Also, they said that those with an external locus of control are more likely to blame external factors and invest less in human capital. So, because you believe, they call it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another area, if you're into statistics, there was something called Bayesian statistics, where you have something called Bayesian priors, and all that means is that if you whatever you expect to happen is there's a good chance it's going to happen just like that. So, if you go into a situation expecting a negative outcome, you expect to fight, and you come in like this and you're ready to fight, you're gonna probably get a fight because you're approaching it as a fighter, and so when you approach someone as a fighter, then they're gonna pull up their dukes and they're gonna fight you, right? Whereas if you'd approached it differently, you would have got a different outcome. Locus of control can predict financial well-being. Large population studies have directly linked psychological outlook to financial outcomes. So here's an example. A nationally representative UK study examined intelligence, mental health, and locus of control as predictors of financial well being. Their key finding was even after controlling for demographics, intelligence, locus of control predicted your financial outcome the most. Ain't that something else? Doesn't that contradict every single thing that you hear from people that want to embrace the victim mentality? They said even when you control for demographics, your race, your where you came from, everything else, when you control for even intelligence, I mean, I thought intelligence would make a difference. Like you got to be smart, right? No, if you are a brilliant wimp, right? If you have a high IQ but don't believe in yourself and don't have any sort of belief that you can accomplish that your actions matter, then guess what? You will be as successful as a person with no intelligence at all. You're not going to accomplish anything. You might have the strength of a bull, but the impact of a mosquito because you're a wimpy bull. And I want you to think about how many people we have that you've run across in our community that have a lot of power, a lot of intelligence, a lot of capability, but they're just scared. And there's a saying that goes in that I've heard in the streets, and it applies directly to finance, where they say scared money don't make no money, and all that. Or another way to say it is nothing ventured, nothing gained. Or a way we say it in finance is, well, higher risk can lead to higher reward. And one of the things that we find out about Black people, because we are so deeply entrenched and deeply invested in the victim mentality sometimes, is that we don't take a lot of risk. So because you don't take a lot of risk, you don't get a lot of reward. And then we don't get a lot of reward, you say it's because I'm Black, when part of it might be because you're Black, but a lot of it's because you didn't take a damn chance. You didn't try. My and everybody's affected by this on one way or another. I met my wife in 1993 in the cafeteria at Indiana University, and I didn't start dating her for many years. And people say, "Well, why didn't you date her?" Then and in my head, I think I told you the story. I'm embarrassed by the story because people make fun of me. They call me a simp when I tell it, but I gotta be honest. I didn't try it because she had so many boys, so many guys wanted to connect with her. I can't compete with Alan Henderson. If you know Alan Henderson, you know this guy was 6'9". He was a star of the basketball team. He was as smart as a medical. He could have been a medical doctor. His dad was a doctor, and he played for the Atlanta Hawks. And he would pick her up from work every day. And my wife just thought he did it because he didn't have nothing else to do. And I said, "What are you talking about? This is insanity. Like, what world do you live in?" And I was like, I don't want to try to compete with that. So you know what? If you ask my wife, well, why didn't you date Boyce back then? She would say, well, because he didn't ask me. He didn't try. And I was kind of, I mean, honest. Let's just be honest though. I don't know if I would have been ready to like meet my wife in my 20s. I'm being quite. Just don't tell her that. But still though, it's like I didn't try. So because I did not try, then I didn't even open the door for the possibility that something's going to happen because she wasn't going to try. She's not. She wasn't raised that way. She was raised to be to let the man kind of do what the man's supposed to do. So even then, it's kind of like I think about life, and there's so many scenarios where you didn't get what you wanted because you didn't even try. You'll never know if you could have succeeded in that business because you were too scared to make a move. Um, and it's up to you to sort of think about what that might be. But literally, I would say that it is my opinion that developing an internal locus of control based on the research is gives you the greatest possibility of being successful. Really committing to the idea that yes, we have racism, yes, we have obstacles, yes, I was born in the projects, yes, I don't have a family that supports me, but what I choose to do is going to be the greatest determinant of my outcomes, not what they choose to do. That gives you the best chance to win. So let's keep going. And don't tell nobody that story about my wife. I'm embarrassed to even repeat that. It makes me sound like a wimp. But anyway, but I ain't no wimp now. I grew out of that. Let's just say that. All right. So let's see. All right. Next is entrepreneurial success and internal control beliefs. Research in entrepreneurship also confirms the same effect. A study of small business owners found that internal locuses of control, meaning an understanding and a belief that my actions determine my outcomes, lead to stronger entrepreneurial competence and better business performance and quality of life. So basically, belief in your personal agency can lead to more initiative, better decision making, stronger persistence, and a greater willingness to take calculated risk. This is what we just talked about. Calculated risk. Like, okay, it might work out, it might not, but and I thought about it. I maybe I prayed about it, and now I'm ready to go down. I'm ready to go make this move, right? So the victim mentality, it does the opposite. It discourages action and it discourages experimentation because you end up internalizing the failure. If something goes wrong, you say it went wrong because I was supposed to fail anyway, and therefore it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because now I'm going to quit, which will solidify and it will what's the word? It will it will what not solidify, it will calcify in a way like my failure, it'll make it like permanent, right? Whereas A person, what I've seen from really successful people is they look at failure as data, just like, okay, I tried it this way, it didn't work. So I know another way that it doesn't work. So let me try it this way. Let me try that way. Let me do this. Let me do that. Right. Um, but if you internalize it, then you're just going to quit. And then you go the rest of your life. And that is the last chapter of your book. Your book is 2 pages long. And your last chapter is I tried and I failed, and that's it. Whereas your book, maybe God's book, was supposed to be 300 pages long. And you were supposed to have an epic journey of successes and failures on your way to becoming whatever it is you want to become. So I say, forget man's book, grab God's book. That's what's going to make you great. All right. So next, the locus of control predicts educational and achievement outcomes also. Educational research consistently finds that beliefs about control affect, sorry, affect. Sorry, it's early in the morning. Control affect effort and achievement. So students with an internal locus of control attribute success to their effort and ability. They persist longer. They have higher academic performance. So in fact, it even says to me that if I had a choice between being a dumb person who thinks he's smart versus a smart person who thinks he's dumb, I'd rather be the dumb person who thinks he's smart because if you're dumb and you think you're smart, you're just gonna keep on trying. Like sometimes I wonder about that. Like I'm not stupid, you know. I had my IQ taken. I'm about 135, right? Which is higher than most, but it's not 150 is like that multi super genius level. 135, I guess I might be able to apply to Mensa and possibly get a chance to get in. So it's not terrible. I don't know what I gotta look up the data, but still that's about my number, right? And here's the thing. There in hindsight, when I look back, I can think of times where I ran into people that were stone cold geniuses. I'm talking about people that could do stuff that was supernatural. They could read a book that's 200 pages and memorize every single page. I can't do that. I can't even remember people's names. I told you how Al Sharpton was so. Al and Jesse had this. It was really impressive. They could just remember everybody, and I would just be walking around with them, and they would just remember every pastor, And the thing is, it's really hard to be. Shout out to Reverend Jesse Jackson. I love him, and I hated the way they made his funeral into this campaign stop. It kind of made me mad because I love this man. But anyway, I was so it's a lot of pressure to be a Jesse Jackson because everybody knows you and every single person that you ever meet is always going to remember the conversation you had and their relationship with you, even if it's insignificant, even if it's one of 10,000 relationships. And he was still very good at making every relationship seem important. You know, even when I first met him, when I would see him again, I'd say, "Hey, Reverend Jackson." He'd say, "Hey, Dr. Boyce." Da, da, da. You know, like it wasn't like, "Who are you again? Wait, did I meet you one time? Wait, show me the picture." Yeah, and so the point is to say that you have people out here that are really good, really like genius level. And I met a lot of people like that in my PhD program. And I think it was like if I almost wonder like if I had known how smart they were, maybe I wouldn't have believed that I was supposed to be up there with them. But there was just something inside of me that was like, well, if you failed the test, it's because you didn't try hard enough, so you got to try harder. Right. And so a lot of times I would say that what I think white supremacy can do sometimes if we obsess over it is it can get you to the point where you're glorifying your opponent to the point where you can't focus on what you have, right? It's like a football team who is going to play against another team that's really good, and all they're doing is obsessing over how good the other team is. Well, you know their wide receivers are so fast you can't even catch them, and their defensive backs they hit so hard that they might knock your teeth out, right? If you're talking like that constantly, then you're gonna have you'll never compete against someone like that, right? You've lost a lot of the battle already. Most battles are won before they begin through preparation and mindset. And so, how often do you see us sitting around talking all day about what white people can do to us, what they just did to us, what they about to do to us, what they could do to us? And this is used in so many areas, and it infuriates me. It's used a lot in politics. It's like, well, you don't vote for me, then y'all gonna be in chains. And you know, remember the saying that like they're gonna put you in chains and come kill you. And it's just like, come on, man. You know, like give us a chance. Like let's talk about how great we are. Let's talk about how amazing we can be. Let's talk about what we've overcome. And I can just tell you, when I look at black people, I don't see another group of people that can say we overcame the slave dungeons in West Africa, the Middle Passage, 250 years of the most brutal slavery known to man, where they literally have breeding farms where they would breed the biggest, strongest slaves, which created a little bit of a super species. I mean, there's things that we can do physically that other people can't do. I just saw a high school kid run the 100-meter dash as fast as Ben Johnson ran in the Olympics in 1988 when he was pumped up on steroids. There's never been a white guy do that. There's never been a white kid that could run that fast. right? It's so so and I can keep going. So in my view, it's like, yeah, we have a lot stacked against us, but we have so many things working for us. And I can tell you that when you really have a really hungry black kid that's really just determined and focused and very passionate and confident and going 100%, usually that kid ends up excelling and dominating what they do. Like when we get into something, we just kind of become the greatest and the best at it. And that's to me what you tap into, and that's going to give you your best chance to win. It doesn't mean that they aren't going to undermine you or try to trick you or steal from you or whatever, because it's competition. That's what competitors do. But it does mean that you have to sort of have a certain mindset to realize, according to the book Powernomics, which I agree with, that you're really in a competition. Economics is a competition, and people just don't play fair. But that's it. I'd like to tell you that that your journey to financial success is going to be rosy and beautiful, and everyone's going to give you exactly what you deserve. But that will be a damn lie. No, people are going to kick, bite, scratch, and cheat and lie and steal and do all kinds of stuff, and it's gonna suck. But resilient people win. Resilient people win. All right, so let's go back to Instagram real quick. I want to show you all a couple of things. And by the way, here's the link. We're doing the financial slumber party on the 13th. I'll put the link in the comments if you want to join us. And one more thing too is, if you have kids and you want your kids to learn economics early, we have financial workbooks that are really good. They cover every grade level. So you can go to financialworkbooks.com. That's financialworkbooks.com. You can get 70% off your workbooks if you want by using the code morning70, morning70, all one word. Use that code, and you can get your workbooks. The summer will be here before you know it. And I think that will be a great time to get your kids introduced to wealth. All right, and it took us years to put those things together. It was really fun, but it was very difficult. All right, so let me show you. Let's go back. I want to show you all some stuff so we can kind of grab our little lessons for today. All right, so here I'm gonna pull this up. So first off, this is just stupid. I shared this, but my wife misses me when I'm gone, so I bought this like life-size pillow of me, and I said I want you to put this in the bed, and this is my permission that I'm giving you to cuddle with another man when I'm gone. So that's her reaction. She was kind of like, she thought I was a goofy weirdo, which is 100% true. So I bought this for her just so that she wouldn't miss me when I'm gone. So there we go. That's just that. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, baby, you're welcome. All right. So next, let's move to the next one. Oh, this is I'm not, let's skip this. Okay, here's a little cartoon. This is something I think this is a really cool, exciting way to teach wealth to kids. So we do have some cartoon series that we're kind of creating to kind of utilize all the new content creation techniques that are out there. And I think this is a perfectly appropriate way for your kids to get introduced to wealth. And when everything's together and ready, I'll let you guys know. But I just wanted to show you all some of this so you can kind of see this. All right, so let me play it. Here it goes.
Never seen a race like this before. Bright lights glowed above the go-kart track as engines rumbled at the starting line. Racers leaned forward, gripping their steering wheels, ready to burst into action. Malik's eyes were wide with excitement. Right beside him stood a cheerful character named Stock, a small, energetic guide who loved to talk about how money grows. Stock smiled and pointed toward the track. "Watch closely," Stock said. "This race is a lot like how I move." The signal flashed and the race began. Some carts blasted forward immediately, speeding around the track like rockets. The crowd gasped as they zoomed far ahead. Other carts started slower. They rolled forward steadily, carefully taking each turn without rushing. Malik noticed something strange as the race continued. Some of the fastest carts began to wobble. One racer took a corner too quickly and spun around. Another slowed down after racing too hard. Meanwhile, the steady racers kept moving forward. Not the fastest, but smooth and consistent. Stock leaned over and whispered to Malik, "You see that? I move like this too." Malik looked confused. "You do?" he asked. Stock nodded. "When you buy a stock, you own a tiny piece of a company. And just like these carts, my value can move up and down. Some companies grow quickly and their stock prices race ahead. Other times things slow down and prices dip for a while. But here's the important part," Stock said with a grin. "Over time, strong companies keep moving forward." Malik watched as the racers came around for the final lap. The carts that rushed too fast were no longer leading, but the steady racers were still moving, still gaining ground. By the finish line, the race looked completely different than when it started. Malik smiled as he understood the lesson. Stock gave him a small nod. "Growing fast can be exciting," Stock said, "but the path to growth doesn't always move in a straight line." Malik had never seen a race like
Okay, So everybody was able to see that, right? I should have checked my audio and video before I played that. But yeah, it's really to kind of show that if you want to get your kids, and your grandkids ready when it comes to wealth, I think that it's probably best to try to make it fun and light. It doesn't have to be serious. I've seen people teach kids wealth and they torture these poor kids by having them like really studying like the details of financial calculations and some kids are ready for that, but a lot of kids just want to be kids. And the reality is truly actually a lot of life really is a little bit like a game. It is it's a and you can compare it to a video game. When you first play a video game, it's really hard. You don't know what's going on, but you keep trying over and over again, and then eventually you master it. And life isn't much different from that. So remember, there's lots of different learning pathways. I'm a big fan of things like conversational learning, what we do every morning, because I figure if we're sitting around and we're just talking about wealth and finances, you're going to learn something, right? Just like if I want to be a rapper, I'm not going to go take a class at Yale on how to rap. That's not going to make me a good rapper. It's going to make me very stiff. I'm not going to be very good at it. If I want to rap, I should go hang out with D1 or Ice Cube or Ti and just we'll just talk about it. And I get to sit in the studio, bop my head, and and just have some fun. And next thing you know, the art form comes out, the beauty comes out, right? So ultimately, with our kids, remember, I would encourage you to let your children know, your grandkids know, wealth is cultural. So develop a culture where where the wealth and the money and the success just permeates and flows through the fabric of that culture, almost the way blood flows through your bloodstream. You don't know where your blood is at. You don't wake up every day and say, "Let me check to see if my blood is there. Let me make sure it's flowing." No, the blood is just there, right? And just like the wealth should just be there. It's not like, "Oh, we're gonna go and we're gonna get wealth and we're gonna change this and change that and we're gonna consciously go get it." I mean, I get it, but really, you want to get to the point where it's just like, well, of course we're doing well because that's what we do. It's like breathing oxygen. Like, why would we expect there not to be air in the room? Why would I expect blood to not be in my veins, right? If you do it that way, then not only will you succeed at a high level, but you will have access to things that others traditionally may not have had because you won't be a person who's thinking you could be a wealth builder. You'll be a person that just knows you're a wealth builder. It will just come with just existing, right? That's the goal. That's the goal. All right. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. If you do stock options with us, don't forget we meet on the 9th. That's tomorrow night. And so I'll send you all a link if anybody else wants to join. It's drboyceprime.com. That's the URL, Dr. Boyce Prime. And I will see you all tomorrow morning as well. So God bless you. Have a great day, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.